Welcome, everyone. Perhaps an age-old question, all-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive. Let's see what the answer is. Well, really, in the end, it's up to you, the consumer, to decide. I've put together this little presentation just to highlight some of the major kind of pros and cons of each one. And I do want to give the sort of statement that I am not by any means a mechanical expert. I am a car consumer. I'm not a person who works I'm not an auto mechanic. I don't change my own oil. I am just simply just kind of a regular guy that is not affiliated with the auto industry in any way. So I've done my best to kind of put together my knowledge of just simply being a consumer, not an insider, not an expert, on what all-wheel drive is versus front-wheel drive, so that you, a consumer, can compare the two and make your own decision. So, what is all-wheel drive? All-wheel drive is a type of drivetrain that distributes power to the front and back wheels of a vehicle at the same time. It is pretty much the only way that a vehicle can have power to all four wheels. Keep in mind that most all-wheel drive vehicles have intelligent all-wheel drive. This means that they are essentially front-wheel drive cars until the computer senses rear-wheel slippage and sends power automatically to them to stop the slippage. Some car manufacturers have chosen to exclusively offer all-wheel drive as the only drivetrain of choice for their brand. What is front-wheel drive? Front-wheel drive is a type of drivetrain that allows power to be in the two front wheels of a vehicle at the same time. The rear wheels are just kind of along for the ride. Generally, front-wheel drive comes standard with most cars and many crossovers, light-duty trucks, and SUVs. All-wheel drive pros and cons. You're going to get a better grip on the road with all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is great in wet, snowy, or slushy road conditions. It can provide the driver with more safety and confidence on the road. All-wheel drive cons. All-wheel drive is more expensive than front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is usually $1,000 to a $10,000 possible upgrade. If you blow a tire on an all-wheel drive vehicle, you have to replace all four tires. Uneven treads in the tires can cause damage to the all-wheel drive system. This is why you have to replace all four tires if you blow a tire. All-wheel drive will generally reduce fuel economy by 1 mile per gallon in comparison to front-wheel drive. So this means that, let's say you were to buy a Ford Fusion that is front-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive. The all-wheel drive model will get 1 mile per gallon less than its front-wheel drive counterpart. So all-wheel drive will give you less fuel economy, 1 mile per gallon generally. Some people that's a lot, some people that's a little. You have to decide. And the all four tires thing, keep that in mind. Okay, front-wheel drive pros. Front-wheel drive does adequately well in wet, snowy, slushy road conditions. It generally comes as the standard drivetrain on a lot of vehicles, so therefore you aren't paying extra for it. If you blow a tire with front-wheel drive, you can just replace that one tire. Maybe you blow two tires. You can just replace those two. You do not have to replace all four of them. Front-wheel drive generally gets 1 mile per gallon better than all-wheel drive would on the same vehicle. So you get a Honda Accord that has front-wheel drive, you will get 1 mile per gallon better than a Honda Accord with all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive cons. It's not as good in the snow or the slush. I don't think rain you would notice any different, but snow or really slushy conditions, front wheel drive wouldn't perform as adequately as all wheel drive would. So which is better? Now you have to decide as the consumer. I can't decide for you. Front wheel drive, as we've seen, it is a little bit cheaper. I mean, it's the standard drivetrain, and therefore it's going to be cheaper than all wheel drive. All wheel drive is considered an upgrade. You're going to get slightly better fuel economy with a front wheel drive vehicle. A big advantage is you don't have to replace all four tires if you have a blowout. If you hit a pothole and a tire just blows, if you've got a front wheel drive car, you can replace that one tire and you're good to go. In an all wheel drive car, you would have to replace all four tires. That's rough. Front wheel drive, let's keep in mind, it's not as good as all wheel drive in the snow, but it is adequate in wet, snowy, or slushy conditions. All wheel drive, it's great in the snow, the wet, the slushy conditions. Great. I have an all wheel drive vehicle now, and I had a recent situation where there was definitely a couple of inches of very wet, slushy snow on the ground. It was a midday snowfall, and I had to go out in it because I was going from, in my job, I have to travel from one location to another, which is literally a 5 mile ride. Okay. And in those 5 miles during this active snowstorm that was going on, and it was only maybe 3 inches of snow, but the roads hadn't been treated, the plows weren't around, you were going out in it, and it was bad. I had all-wheel drive, and those around me, I suppose, had front-wheel drive, or maybe even rear. And I was cutting through that snow like butter. The slightest incline, I watched people sliding out, wheels spinning. It was a mess. And I chugged up that hill like the little engine that could. It was amazing. I felt so great that I had all-wheel drive because without it, I don't know how I would have made those 5 miles safely and easily as I had with my all-wheel drive. I was very, very, very thankful for all-wheel drive in that moment. Now, all-wheel drive, hey, look, I live in Pennsylvania. It snows out here. If I lived in Arizona or California, if you lived in some place with, perpetual sunshine and it never snows, then I don't really see any point in upgrading to the all-wheel drive. But this is up to you to decide. But I would also say that all-wheel drive is really a proper upgrade. I mean, do you want to drive a Honda Pilot or some kind of pickup truck that, let's say, has front-wheel drive? I just feel like all-wheel drive at some point, there's kind of no point of buying an SUV, like a proper SUV. Maybe a crossover that's front-wheel drive is acceptable. But if you don't have all-wheel drive in one of those mid-size or larger, like a Honda Pilot kind of thing, a Ford Explorer, why would you only have front-wheel drive in a car like that, in a truck like that? I feel like, what's the point? If you've got a proper SUV, I really don't understand why you would only get front-wheel drive in it. But that's me. And let's understand that sometimes in purchasing a vehicle, you might only have the choice between rear-wheel drive, which is one wheel in the back spinning. Power goes to that one wheel, and it is terrible and straight up unsafe, if you ask me, in the wet, the snow, or slushy conditions. I knew somebody that had a rear-wheel drive Cadillac, and I'm telling you, a drop of rain, and this thing would spin out. Rear-wheel drive is terrible. And what I find some car manufacturers to be doing, let's take Tesla, for instance. I believe this is the way it works. And even I think even Lincoln I drive a Lincoln, and I think the Lincoln, I suppose it's the Aviator, has this. I'm noticing a trend with some manufacturers that they'll give you rear-wheel drive as standard. Rear-wheel drive is terrible. I mean, it's unsafe in wet, snowy, slushy, even just wet conditions, you can slip out. Rear-wheel drive is terrible. It gives you more of a feel for the road because you're being pushed along instead of kind of being pulled along like with front wheel drive. But it's really unsafe in wet conditions. And what I'm seeing is that they're not just giving you front wheel drive standard. You're getting an SUV or maybe like a performance vehicle like a Tesla, and they're giving you rear-wheel drive. And to get all-wheel drive costs $10,000 more, or let's say maybe $5,000 more. So they're really kind of nailing you because they know that people aren't really going to want rear-wheel drive. I mean, why would you drive a Lincoln Aviator is like a mid-size SUV? Why would you want a rear-wheel drive in that? Maybe you could live with it if it had front-wheel drive, but rear-wheel drive is just downright silly. So if you're stuck between that upgrade of, okay, it's either rear-wheel drive or it's all-wheel drive, what do I do? The answer is all-wheel drive. I would say make that upgrade for certain over rear-wheel drive. But front-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive, depending on the type of vehicle that you're buying and the road conditions that you'll encounter, given the climate of the place where you live, it really shouldn't be too difficult to decide on your own. I have all-wheel drive and I'm happy with it, although I do sometimes feel very bothered in the back of my mind that, oh no, what if I blow out a tire by hitting a pothole or something, and I've got to replace all four tires, and like what if that happens like another couple months later? What if I have to do it again because of some other incident? Now I've never actually suffered a full-blown blowout like that. I've gotten a nail in the tire and the air escapes, but then they repair it. I get a donut on there. I go to a tire place for $30. They fix the thing, put the thing, and I'm good. But you get those blowouts with bad roads where you live. It could be a little scary, the prospect of having to replace all four tires. Okay, so hopefully this helps you in making your decision.